hip hop, and he's Swizz Beatz' brother. He's also Mashonda's brother. So why not? He is the connector in all this. So why not have him host it?
What's going on, everybody? I need everybody to have fun. This is good vibes, good energy, synergy, love, peace, and blessings. We're coming together to just celebrate, blend, which is important, and I feel like we should all blend, whether it's family, friendship, relationship, you know what I mean? I'm a little nervous.
Don't be nervous.
But this is really important, and blend is just important, and I feel like we should all come together, blend as one, and just be, you know what I mean, outstanding and shine and connect the dots and all be communicating and just vibes, energy, you know what I mean? But I want to bring Chris to the table. Chris is going to take over. I want everybody to have a good time. I'm Andre King. Let's have a good time.
All right.
Thank you very much. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Awesome. So, is this where you want me to sit?
Wherever you want.
All right, it's fine. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
How many of you have Blend the book already? Thoughts?
It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I think what affected me the most is like the pain, like how I can identify to that. So I always want to know like how does she deal with the pain with blended or betrayal or be with someone in a long-term relationship and then someone else will benefit and then being poured into someone, and how do you want to blend with that? And you get so hurt or angry you feel like, you know, a scorn woman. So I kind of identified how she like, I haven't done it, but when she sat down with Alicia and they spoke, and or when they decided not to, just let it sit for a second, and then they progressed on, and then they made peace in the middle. But for me, I just want to know, how did she get to that point to even want to do that? I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. How many people are parents here? Wow, how many people are in co-parenting relationships? And how many of you find it challenging?
Jesus.
It is. I think I've been rude. My name is Chris Classic. I'm a songwriter for film and TV. I'm from New York, and I've been in Atlanta for the last 2 years. I have a 14-year-old son, an 11-year-old son, and a baby girl on the way. I've been married twice, and I'm an advocate for co-parenting because it's how I was raised. I've been in blended families my entire life, on both sides. Even when I lived with my aunt and uncle, they had a blended family as well. So blended families have totally surrounded me since birth. And it's given me a lot of experience, and it allowed me to deal with divorce, separation, and co-parenting in a very authentic way. And what I found is that there was no guide for Black men to express themselves and to share these experiences and to visually see how to do certain things. There's a lot of stigma in our community about having friendships and relationships with your ex. You know, whether it be a lot of artists who don't want to, you know, share the fact that they have children for, you know, potentially ruining other romantic relationships. There's this stigma of, well, if you guys are cool, that must mean something else is going on. And that becomes a lot of the reason why many men don't publicly share their co-parenting situation. And that's why there's also a lot of mistrust in, you know, in our community with men who are raising children. A lot of women, even my wife currently was just like, I never wanted to date a dude that had a kid. And it was the extreme circumstance of my experience being a co-parent and her being able to trust the fact that there was nothing going on with my ex-wife that allowed our family to actually become a family. And not everyone gets that experience, but I've been so grateful to know Mashonda and to see her evolution and her growth. We have mutual friends, and to be able to see her in the art space is a great thing, because a lot of people who go through divorce and are dealing with the difficulties of co-parenting, especially women, aren't always able to get back to their joy and able to get back to them. They become mothers only, right? And who they are as an individual sometimes gets pushed to the side. Unfortunately, whether you know it or not, that causes resentment. And you resent your co-parent for leaving you in that predicament, right? Because you're in a weird place. You want control because no one's gonna raise your baby like you, right? But then you also need space to be yourself and to date and to do all of these things. And so it ends up with a lot of resentment. And sometimes you resent your ex, you resent your child without knowing it or not, because you're mad that you have to be there on Friday and go to this basketball game that you kind of don't want to go to because there's this thing that you want to go to. And so it's a lot. And so I'm grateful to see that there is a guide, a viable guide. There's something about this book, and there's a big choice that Mashonda had. A big choice to make this book juicy if she wanted to for a certain crowd. And in the back of my mind, I was, I didn't read physically the book. I listened to the audiobook, which was great because it was Mashonda's voice, it was Alicia's voice, it was Swizz's voice, and it was real. And as a musician, it's kind of like, I'm listening to emotion, you know what I'm saying? But she had a choice, and the choice that she made was to make this book a viable guide. It's real.
It's a book that I wrote because it's the book that I needed when I was going through what I was going through. And it's a true testament to becoming a mother, getting separated, getting divorced, and then becoming a single mother. And then trying to figure all of that out. And then I got to a place where I needed to figure out how to co-parent and how to accept my new life. And then how to create a new relationship with my ex. Once that was created and it was somewhat healthy, the next step was creating a relationship with his wife. And people ask me, well, what was your inspiration, your motivation? Why did you write a book like this? I always say that it was because I knew that I needed to heal. And my son is my number one priority. And I needed to be healed and the best version of myself for him. So you pretty much broke down the entire book, which is great, because it's always so refreshing to hear a different person's perspective and how it affected them. And I have so much respect for you as a man and as a father, because it's very rare to encounter a man that's vulnerable enough to speak on the topic. So this is probably our second time meeting in person, but we follow each other on social media, and we're always like bigging each other up because he posts a lot about his blended family as well, and it's just beautiful. And so I think tonight I just wanted to feel like a conversation. I've also invited Monyetta to be here, who has written a book called Keep It Classy, and she's also a great demonstration of what it is to co-parent and blend. And I just feel like it's something that as parents we owe our children. Not only do we owe it to them, but we owe it to ourselves to get to a place where we can heal and let go and get back to the things that we love. And as women, sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's harder for us than it is for men to move on and let go and surrender. But if we want to be beautiful, living examples for our children, it's the step that we have to take. And my son was my springboard. He is my springboard into being a better person every day. I am also going to invite Renetta to say a few words, and I want to take questions from you all because I know that people have a lot of questions, because when I left off in 2010, after I got divorced, where we left off, it was messy. It was a very public, messy divorce. And we put a book out and everyone's like, how'd you get to that point, right? This doesn't even make sense. But what happened in those 8 years was a lot of healing, a lot of communication, a lot of coming to the table and really just opening up to each other. And those are the first steps. The first 4 chapters in the book are all about healing. It's all about really just getting into who you are and tearing yourself apart and just putting the pieces back together again. And that's what I want people to understand. You don't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm gonna blend my family. You know, you really have to do the self-work. There's a lot of ego checking that has to take place. There's a lot of surrendering. And you just have to operate from a place of love constantly. And I feel like if you're a good parent, it won't be as hard as you think it is, because you ultimately want to do what's best for your child. So I am opening the floor to questions or comments. Yes.
So, how do you think it is when you're dealing with a family with 2 boys that are almost the same age and with a respect factor when I'm not the mommy?
The respect factor from the boys for you?
I have one boy and he has a boy.
And you're feeling disrespected from his son?
Sometimes. And my son is just equally as bad.
How old are they?
8 and 10.
Yeah, that's the age for that. You have 2 boys, so I think that's a good one for you.
Yeah, so I'm in the exact same situation, but the blessing is that my boys really get along. I think that it's, actually, Manya, why don't you sit here and I'll sit there. The interesting thing is that it takes both parents or 4 parents, if they're around, to kind of foster the environment for respect. So my wife's son's father, my co-parent, dad, lives across the country. And we, not knowing, had some mutual friends. And because our mutual friends were certain unsavory characters, it allowed him to have a respect for me, and vice versa. And knowing that his father respects me and I get along with his dad allows him to have a certain measure of respect for me. My son, you know, growing up with his mom, obviously has a preference to his mom, which he should. But I think because of him and I and our relationship, he sees the type of person that I am, and he knows how my love is channeled. And so he knows that it's really important for him to show a certain amount of respect for my wife, who is now his mom. We encourage having individual moments where, you know, sometimes when she wants to run an errand, she'll purposely invite him to go on her own with him. And that really makes a difference because he gets to have that same quality time. You know, she's a very, even though she's a very strong type of, aggressive type of woman, she's also very motherly. So if, you know, Julian isn't feeling good, she's like babying him a little bit, and you know, she's making sure that he ate, and it's the little things that allows him to look at her not as dad's wife who is not my mom, right? It's more of, this is a mother to someone else. First and foremost, she's a mother. So her concern and her care for me is warranted and it's genuine. But at 8 and 10, the boys are at the age where they're trying to figure out who they are. And in that equation of a 4-person house, it's kind of like, and I'm just assuming 4, it's kind of like, well, who am I? And what's my space? And where's my stuff? And I don't like that kind of milk. Why do we have to buy that kind of milk? Because I like almond milk and he doesn't. And same thing in my house. And it's a very natural thing. But, you know, the dads have to play a major part. The dads have to play a major part. The dads have to play a major part in commanding a certain respect. And your husband can respect you all that he wants to himself. It's not always about his example, right? It's not always. It is also sometimes, you know, making your son show a certain amount of care and attention. You know, when I'm not home, I make sure I text Julian and say, well, see if, you know, Ryan needs something. If he's home by himself and I know that she's coming in and it's dark, go to the side door at the carport and wait for her. You know what I'm saying? It's those little things. You have to protect the house when I'm not home, right? And so, conversely, it allows Omar, our youngest, to be able to see this 11-year-old, this 14-year-old kid who's now my brother, kind of by force, cares about my mom too. And it allows them to have a relationship that is very respectful of each other. So, you're very welcome.
Yes. I wanted to know, what was the turning point for you to decide to be a blended family?
The turning point was my son. He was 6 years old at the time, probably about 5, and he just had a lot of questions. You know, he wanted to know, well, why don't you like daddy? And why doesn't daddy like you? And how come you can't come see my house at my room at daddy's house, and vice versa? And he would also wait until he was there to ask me if I wanted to say hello to Alicia. So I could tell that he was trying to connect us. You know, he wanted to feel unity amongst the people that he loves the most. And kids are so sensitive, they pick up on all the energy around them constantly. And that pushed me to wanting to create change in our relationships. And I think one of the first steps was me reaching out to Alicia and personally inviting her to his 6th birthday party. And she accepted. And it was the first time we were in a room together, all of us, like just having a good time. And she invited me out to dinner the next day. And that was really the beginning of what it is now. And I think the bottom line of your answer is to really pay attention to the children, their energy and what they're going through. Also to pay attention to the signs and, you know, how you feel. I mean, you shouldn't have to feel bad when you're raising your children. You know, you want to feel love. You want to feel, it does take a village to raise children, and you want to create a healthy village. So that was my mission.
How do you like co-parent with the parent or the dad that doesn't is in and out of the child's life? So it creates, you know, a feeling inside of rage and hate, or like, oh, you're living your life and I'm here and you're not even investing in the child. If you're not doing it with me, you know. So for me, I have a daughter, she'll be 18. He's in and out of her life. I don't like him. I can't, because I see how he does her, and I feel like I see certain things with her that she yearns for that he can only feel regardless of what I do, and it makes me angry because I don't want her to go out in the street and get it from somewhere else. Thank God I have someone in my life that fills that void, and she says that, but like she's about to graduate. I don't want to talk to him at the graduation. You can't respect him. He wasn't there for nothing. You're in our life, so I'm not at a place where I can blend with him or even be cordial and say hi, because I despise him because of how he did her. Me, I'm past, I guess some of the pain that he did. He doesn't allow me to get past that because the way he treats her, it makes me remember the things he put me through. So what do you do in a situation like that? How do you?
Well, you've read the book, so you know how I dealt with my pain and anger and resentment and hate and blame and all those crazy things that ultimately just make you feel bad because he's living his life. So we can't force anybody to blend. We can't force anyone to co-parent. In situations like this, I always tell mothers that you gotta put your super cape on now, your superhero cape. You've gotta take it up a notch, and you've gotta fill that void, and never be the parent that expresses that feeling to the child. Because you never know what their connection is gonna be like in the future, and you don't ever want her to look at you like, oh, mommy hated you, my parents weren't really there for me. My grandmother raised me, and they had an awful separation and divorce, and for years, still, they're like in their 60s and 70s now, and they still bad talk each other. I'm like, y'all the senior citizens, and you still don't like each other. And you still make me feel crazy when you talk badly about him. It's so unfair. So the only thing that I would say to that, just because I'm an example of it, is to just remove your emotions as much as possible. And I know that it's hard. It's hard, but it's the greatest thing that you can do for yourself and for your daughter.
Can I just add one thing? So, you know how they say that there's a woman's intuition, right? And we can all attest to it. And a mother's intuition, specifically. There's a thing called father's guilt that I just want to insert. Because, I think about today, right? Technology allowed me when I first moved to Atlanta and my son was still in New York, it allowed me to FaceTime him every day. It allowed me to call his phone specifically, not a house phone. I didn't have to go through his mom to speak to him. I had my own relationship built on technology. When I think about my dad did not have that opportunity. And if my dad wanted to call the house, obviously he could, but he had his own demons and his own guilt that kind of kept him away. And so I would suggest, for your sanity's sake, and for your daughter to have a proper view, because now she's 18, so she's going to start to see people for who they are, right? And eventually she will see the characteristics of her father as her father's characteristics, not something that she caused or not something that was pointed directly at you, right? But what I would suggest is, being that her graduation is coming up, kindly go out of your way and let him know that he has the opportunity to create day one at his leisure. And that's the thing. It's gonna, like, sometimes, you ever seen a sporting event where the team is losing bad and it's like the fourth quarter, and you ever notice like some people give up? And that might be where he's at, right? She's 18. He might feel, man, I messed up. I messed this one up. But letting him know that he has the opportunity, one last time, you have the opportunity to create day one at your choice, and I'm not going to obstruct that, or, might give him some freedom to look past his own mistakes and to let go of his guilt and to put his shoulders down and put his tail between his legs and reach out. So just try that. If you can try that and it doesn't work, you can relieve yourself of the burden. And you can also, at that point, maybe wait until she's a little older, but let her know what you've done. and then she'll be able to see him for who he is, and maybe on her own as an adult, figure out how she can maybe, create a relationship maybe when she has kids of her own. My stepdad wasn't cool with me at all. We weren't great. As soon as I had a son, it was different because he felt like he could start from scratch. Are there any other questions?
I do. Oh, okay. Well, my question, I guess, would be, I don't know, I'm interested in this because it's 2 women and 1 male. So it's like I get to get from everybody and including the male's perspective. But I think this question, I want to hear what you have to say too, but this question is definitely geared towards you ladies. Single mothers, I hear you guys say that, and it's so funny because I actually am on child number 2. And he's 1 going on 2. Girl, yay! Girl, that ain't yay when it's a single one. I guess what I'm kind of battling with, and I don't have an example in my life or in my family to see or to ask. When is a good time as far as dating? When you realize, okay, let me start today. I just started today. I threw it out there. When do you know when it's okay for a guy to meet your kids?
That's kind of a hard one. Honestly, it took a while for me, but I had to heal. I don't want to take the baggage into anything,
Right.
and kids feel every single thing. I feel like, of course, woman's intuition, and I'm big on energies. And you don't want to keep introducing them to people like, okay, that's Uncle Frank, Uncle Tom. You cannot do that. Right. Not a good look or a good example. So I would say I have like a 6 month, and I'm all about, time and in order. I would say 6 months, but sometimes you might know sooner, and just go off of the vibe, I would think. What do you think, Mashonda?
I feel like definitely healing first.
Yes. Right.
So your baby's a year old. And
I'm going out too, so let's go.
Okay.
Beat it up.
And you feel ready.
Well, okay, so here's another thing about it. So with my daughter, I'm so protective.
Yes.
She doesn't know anyone.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm on child number 2. I'm like, did I miss out on, some good potential guys? Because everything I do is work, and everybody knows who has kids, like, they come first, so that's your job number 1, and your real job that pays the bills is job number 2. So for me, I'm just trying to, I'm battling with, I want to live my life. I want to have fun. Before I had kids, I had fun. So I'm just I'm going out a little bit more. But I was just wondering, because what I'm realizing is, for a while, I thought guys wouldn't date me because I had 2 kids. Like, people always think, oh, you still dating and it's like, no, actually, no. So I just I battle with that. I'm like, because of course the guys, and I say guys because I am dating. No, but seriously, I just ask because they want, like, they're super interested in it. They want to FaceTime. Oh, let me talk. No, hold on. So I'm like, am I being mean?
Yeah.
Am I being mean?
No, that's something you have to protect.
Yeah,
Your children,
for sure.
their identity, their emotions, everything. Especially, you have a daughter and a son.
Yes.
So that's just like double the work.
Girl.
I have a son, so the last thing I ever want him to do is see me with a ton of different men, because I just believe that that's how he's going to treat women in the future.
Oh, for sure.
I've been divorced for 8 years. He has only met 1 person.
Okay.
And I didn't let him meet him until after maybe 5 months.
Okay.
And I knew that we would be together because we had created something that was real. And it really is, you really just have to go off of your instincts and your gut with this one. You know who's gonna somewhat be persistent and consistent, and who's just gonna be like a date here and there.
For sure.
So it's hard. That's a tricky one.
And from a male's point of view, like, it's just like, how ex pop up and you like, so it's kind of like, I don't know if they feel like I don't like them, or I'm just really like that. I'm really protective over my friends and my kids, my loved ones. So if you were dating a woman and it's been like 5-6 years and you've seen her kind of, you guys are cool, and she just never brought you, even though it's y'all like each other, but y'all still cool, and you just never met her kids, would you think I wasn't interested, or would you think I don't take you seriously, or?
Well, as a father myself, who is conscientious of who my ex-wife dates
Right.
for the very same reason, I understand that she needed her freedom and she needed to be able to date who she chose, right? And so it allowed me, when dating my wife now, to understand that it was basically her call as far as when I met her son. By design, I met her son when my son was with me. We were on spring break, and we were both in Miami at the moment, and it worked because he got to see me as a father first, not someone who was coming to steal his mom, right? And even if it did not work out after that point, I'm still that little boy's dad, right? So it's a little different. I think that you have the responsibility to safeguard your family first.
Right.
And unfortunately, some guys, right, because, listen, my wife is pregnant, and she goes to Publix, and there are still dudes who try to talk to her.
Listen, I know. Very well.
And it's just,
some men.
right, well, that aside, it's also some people using what is the perceived, and that might be able to allow you to identify someone who might have some personal issues stemming from their own childhood. The automatic assumption that you're on your own while pregnant is a really powerful thing. And that's what I tell my sons, because when my sons are at the mall with mom and, before she got pregnant, it was just like to see men, hey, I could be a stepdad. Like, it becomes an end. It becomes kind of a chess game that they try to use. So, but for me, I would look at it much deeper and just say, well, what gives you the inclination that I need that? Trying to holler at someone is one thing. That's natural. But to see someone in that state, right? So you just have to be careful about which men may be using it as some sort of tool to encourage a romantic encounter. And then as opposed to people who are genuinely dads. I'm a dad through and through. Always wanted to be. So when I was dating my wife now, it was just like she knew she could introduce me to her son and there was no problem, right? I wasn't harmful to him. But I still follow her lead as far as what and when she felt comfortable.
And I also think that it's just an open conversation with the person to let them know, are you willing and ready to co-parent? Like, this is real. And in the book, in the book I talk about the first time I introduced this person to Swizz and Alicia, and we had a sit-down talk about Kasseem, my son. Like, it was a conversation because at the time he was helping us raise Kasseem. So it became a four-person thing. And that person has to be willing to be involved on that level. That's how you know it's real.
That's true.
Because that's not something every man wants to deal with.
That's true.
And it's not financial.
It's not. It's
It's
beyond.
not financial.
It's beyond.
Because some men, unfortunately, it's just real. Some men, we think, well, I'm paid, so I can take care of, because I don't have any, so I can take care of, it's no big deal. But it's beyond that, and just kind of letting them know where you don't need them is just as important as letting them know where you do.
And I would add, early on, being on the opposite side before my husband and I got married, and we talked about he had his son, and I had just had my daughter. She was probably 1 year old then, and he was ready to get married, and I told him, I can't marry you until I know I could love your son unconditionally. Because there was things that, even being a mother myself now, I know what that feeling is. So, and I was having feelings where when he would come over, I didn't really want to, it was awkward. And I told him, I mean, let's give it some time, but I needed to make sure I could love this child before committing to you. And because I already knew having a stepfather, you know.
So you had your own triggers.
Correct, of what that was, and I dealt with my sister and my brother. They didn't get along with my stepdad, but I did. And going into that, I just knew there were going to be some days. And those days came because there was a period at 12, my stepson had to move in with us. So for all of those years, his mom had been feeding him a bunch of negative stuff. And I'm always the person who needs to bring good energy and positive. So anytime he was ever around me, I would say, you should feel great. By then we're married. You have 2 mothers. You're a blessed child. You have 3 grandmothers. It was always affirming that you're in a great situation. And it never, you know, for him, even whatever she told him about me, it didn't matter. I stayed the course. And there was a period where my husband, even for us, and I didn't realize it at first, she could only get in touch with us through me. And he was forcing us to deal with each other. So she didn't want to call me at first. I didn't want to have to call her. So there was a period where we just didn't communicate unless it was necessary. And then it became easier at time because she knew she had to deal with me. And then once it became easier, you know, the doors opened and he moved in. And he was like, you're nothing like how I thought you were. And he started, yes, and then he started asking, is it okay if I call you mom? I said, well, you know, I told him, I don't want you to call me mom because my daughter's there now and everybody's, this is Kayla's mom or this your stepmom. And to this day, that's my son. I don't call him a stepson. I've raised you since you've been here. I said, well, I just need you to be okay. So a lot of things with my stepson, I just wanted to make sure he was good and not place it on his mother. So we were able to get through that period. And trust me, there were days, there were a lot of days. And it got to a point where, I mean, I had to just tell her, you're just not allowed in here. You know, we got them. They could communicate. Well, because after a while, you are creating so much bad energy because you're angry, and you're angry about the wrong things because now your son is loving me, and he's getting from me what he wants from you. Right. And you're angry with me. I didn't do that. You have to fix it. That's right. I had to work on me well before I agreed to marry, you know, my husband. And so much better that space go on. Now kids are 20, he's 23. And he called me and said, hey mom, I just want to let you know everything you've always taught me. I'm appreciative. I love you forever. I may not admit this tomorrow, but I'm telling you today. So all of those it pays off later on.
And being I call them bonus moms, stepmoms. It's not easy. I've been there too. And just like you said, you have to be persistent. You have to constantly operate from a place of love when it comes to the child. Because they grow up and they remember you for who you were to them. And everything that their mom said or other people said, they start looking at them like, why did you say that? So congrats to you.
Absolutely. Well, that would segue into my question about, I don't have this, about boundaries. I have a lot of questions because I've been divorced as well for 8 years. I co-parent with my ex-husband. Okay. What boundaries did you put in place to reach this point?
So for me, it was easier for me to deal with Alicia because I had already experienced being a stepmother. So I knew what I wish I would have had, and I knew what I knew what I wanted when I was in her position, as far as respect and appreciation. So I always acknowledged the things that she was doing for my son. you know, I always thanked her, and I also knew that my rules in my house were my rules, and her rules were hers. And you can't send your rules in your child's luggage. You know, you have to allow the other woman to be the woman of her house. As long as she's not hitting your kid or, you know, but if she wants your son to go to sleep at 7 versus 8 at your house, then that's what it is. And kids will try to, you know, manipulate situations. And he used to call me and be like, Mom, they're making me go to sleep all early. And I'm like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do, because you're there, so you have to respect that. And, you know, the boundaries are very important because they really do set up the energy for the long-term relationship. It's always a conversation. I mean, we sit down, we talk a lot, we have group texts, and it's always an ongoing conversation. Blending is a lifestyle. You don't just get to blend today and you're not blending tomorrow. So it's constant work.
What about for you as well?
I totally agree with all of that. I look up to you guys. Seriously, I'm on the front end of blending. And you just have to communicate. That's huge. We have the group text, we have all of that. I let her know how appreciative I am of her because I've heard horror stories. Like, my parents have been married 46 years going on February. So that's why it was super important to me, even when I was hurting, to do what's best for them and put the kids first and allow them to, you know, just be with their father and be with her when she became a part of the equation. And, you know, you just have to. I text her, tell her, like, because it could, you know, I'm like, I love that you love my kids. And that's all I ask for. So yeah, just set boundaries, have conversations, and it's an ongoing thing, like you said.
I would suggest also fathers create boundaries with each other as well. The boundaries in that particular case have always been about respect and acknowledgement of, you know, I know that your son already has you as a father, and I'm not trying to replace you. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to enforce what you would like for your son and to be support. That's huge. I think in the case with most moms, their boundaries are about allowance. You know, what do I allow? What do I allow? What do you know? What I'm okay with. And I think with dads, it helps to be able to almost still aggressively say, well, I'm not looking to do this. I'm not looking to do that. This is where I stand. I understand that this is your son that I'm caring for. So if, you know, something as simple as taking him to the barbershop, how do you prefer your son's hair cut as opposed to my son who has a different style of, you know, hair that he likes? So in my particular case, it's about the boundaries of saying, I know where I'm at, I just need to let you know so you don't have to think about it. And that's very helpful because it allows the other father to be able to give his perspective and to feel like his son is not being manipulated to see his flaws in his absence.
I was going to add in the beginning to my ex's wife, Crystal, reached out to me because they got together kind of early and everything moved quickly, which created some friction, of course. And I do respect that she reached out to me and said, like, look, I'm not trying to replace you. You know, I could never replace you. You're a big mom. But, you know, can we meet? And we did. And it was amazing just to have that conversation and just let it all out there. But of course, problems as far as, you know, doing certain things that the mom would do. And, you know, at that point she didn't have kids. So it took a while to get to the beautiful place where we're at now, which I love, thank God. But, you know, it took a while and you're going to have to talk and just talk some more and figure it out. But as long as the kids, you know, are your number one priority and you come from a place of love, it will all work out. If you just really operate from that space.
So do you guys, so is it individual counseling, and is there family counseling?
We do both. We've done a lot of family counseling over the years. I've done counseling by myself. We do counseling, 3 of us, and a lot of it. I definitely recommend it. There's a huge stigma in our culture that sitting down with a psychiatrist or a therapist it's weird, but it's really not. It's the only way to get to the next level in evolution. Children need it too. I had my first session with my son the other day, and it was awesome. I mean, he's 11 now, but he's as sharp as, I feel like I'm talking to a grown man. And he had some things that he needed to work through, and we were bumping heads. And we sat down with a doctor and walked out of that session like, wow. And now we're reminding each other constantly, you're doing it, Mom.
Right.
I'm doing it too. So, you know, it's so necessary, definitely.
I have a question for Mom, but I just want to let everyone know she is a therapist, so she's here.
Yes, plug in.
My question to you is like, you know, when Neo and you split and Crystal came in, like, did you find yourself more angry with him or her? Like, you came in on my life, or, you know, what were you doing to make you feel you need to be here versus here with us and making your family right?
Great question. I definitely wasn't mad at her because, like, I'd like to say she was collateral damage because I know you guys are aware of everything, as I felt sorry for her. But, you know, because, no, seriously, they're bad. They can be brutal. And, like, of course, when I had those moments, like, well, why? Like, why not me? Like, I didn't do anything, and this is this. And I realized through my healing, that it doesn't matter how awesome you think you are, how good of a woman you are, how fly you are. If that man isn't ready at that moment, it's nothing on this earth that you could do. And I know that at the time, he wasn't ready. And I know it's things that within him that he's, you know, has to deal with or has dealt with that, you know, got him to the place where he didn't want to move forward here and had his time and moved on with her. And that's fine, you know. Like, of course, I didn't like it then, but that's not who God has for me. And so I had to heal and get through that and realize that, and definitely not let it affect the kids. So that's why I pride myself on not, of course I hurt and like I'll put them to bed and then I'll deal with my stuff, you know, because they feel the energy, they feel everything. So it was super important. I definitely wasn't mad at her at all. But of course, you know, I had my feelings. I am human. You know, like, oh, I feel like, okay, why didn't we go to counseling? Why didn't, like, I feel like we didn't try? But sometimes it's easier to start over with something new, someone you haven't hurt. Someone you haven't, you know what I'm saying, for whatever reason, within him, he felt that was necessary, and that's okay, because that's, you know, not my part. So, yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Mashonda, I hear you guys talking about healing. What are some, I guess, ways, because I'm trying to heal from an abusive relationship myself, what are some ways you guys took those steps to healing? What's that process look like? It just, I mean, step 1, 2, 3, just kind of.
First of all, you have to remove yourself from society. You have to be alone. You have to be so uncomfortable with your aloneness that it forces you to create a change. And it's uncomfortable. I always compare it to the butterfly, you know, the caterpillar, in that dark stage of transformation. It's the same thing. For me, I took that year off and I stayed quiet. I did a ton of interviews in the beginning. I was mad at everybody. I mean, it was terrible. And I have no problem saying that because the one thing I can say about my book is that I didn't sugarcoat it. You know, it is raw. I felt that it was necessary to be raw because we go through raw things. And I didn't want people thinking, oh, they're just good now, they're blending now, but what about all that stuff that happened 8 years ago? We saw that. Y'all did see it because we made it very public.
We saw it.
I had to change my legacy, literally. I didn't want to go down in history being Mashonda, the ex that went crazy on Twitter. You know, I had to rewrite my story.
Oh, wow.
And a huge part of rewriting my story came from the process of being alone, just shutting down, checking my ego in a way that made me cry every day. You know, a lot of blending, people hear the word and they think, you know, it's just about family, it's just about that unit, but it's so much more about self, individual. It's so much more about, because you can't blend if you haven't healed. That's just the fact, that's number one. And you know, it gets me all emotional because I'm proud of myself. I didn't think I was gonna make it. I didn't think I would. You know, it's different when you're going through a divorce and you're like a private person and you know you have a normal life, a 9 to 5, and nobody knows. But when your shit is all over age 6, media takeout every morning, you're waking up to some new headline, and you got this little baby that you need to be sane for. All those things just pushed me to want to make a change in my life. So I used going back to your original question, I literally used my darkness to find my light. And that was one of my number one ways of healing.
I just want to add, there was something that I learned from the book that I didn't really put two and two together. You doing Pilates forced her to kind of channel all her energy into her exercise, which allowed her to forget about pain, right? So it's kind of like they say, if you have a headache, maybe you know, press there, right? Because it transfers certain nerves, right? And so that's something that I've always been a skinny dude my whole life, so I never really thought about, well, maybe I needed to go and actually play ball at a gym every day, or go and work out, or do something that was going to take my brain off of what I was experiencing, feeling guilt, feeling angst, feeling anxiety of, all right, well, what's next? How am I dealing with this? What is my emotional footprint with this woman and this boy who's looking at me as his dad? So in your particular case, what might help is to do certain things that force you to take your brain off
to be in the present.
Right, in that very, very moment. And it's something that we often overlook. You know what I'm saying? Like, get lost in something else that's still helping you and benefiting you, but not allowing you to think about what's wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty
And
much
she has
the
other
thing.
stuff in the book too. That you wanna read.
Yeah, I prayed a lot. My dad is like my backbone. When I would have my moments, he would give me a good old scripture, a word, and just, you know, remind me of my strength, if that makes sense. And meditated, I worked out harder than ever. Seriously, you know. I'm like, okay, well, let me get myself back together and back in shape and get my mind off of things too. And just going through the thick of things and being so hurt, and when we would have our moments, when everything was fresh and not fresh. I'm an analytical person, and I know what my legacy, you know, what I want it to be, and what I know how everything is out there, and I always knew I had a choice. And I always knew, even though they were so young, one day they would see this. And before doing some things, I would stop in my head, I'm not lying, and just, okay, do I want this mugshot? Do I want this story on TMZ? Shut up. Like, you know, just your ego. And I just literally had to put it behind me. And I'm like, okay, no, I won't do that. I'm gonna smile. I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna keep it classy. Like seriously, it's no joke. And I'm like, I have to do this. And right now it's not about me. I'm doing it for them. And for them, you know, and then it just becomes, you know, like you just show love even in a dark situation, and just know that it's not the end of your story. Like I know you thought, because I thought too, we all thought it would be that and them and forever, but no, God has something better, and I just kept telling myself over and over that.
I have more of a statement than a question, well, kind of a question too, but I am so grateful to hear about healing and energy and therapy and coping skills and all the things that you guys have put into place to help you get through these dark times, and ultimately keeping your children at the forefront, because we know we're in a society full of hurt kids that are adults now, you know, and I appreciate that, and I just would love to see or hear like where you guys are going with it. I know you have the book, and I'm you know, I hope it's very successful because it's touching base on some really important issues. Our community, especially for our people, is very broken because of situations like this and the inability to be mature and put the children first. So do you guys have forums where, I know, well, this is your forum, but like, you know, to open up this conversation more? I know you said in the beginning that you had hosted something and no one signed up. Have you done that again since then? And you know, because this is so important. There's so much pain and hurt that are coming from the adults and being transcended to the children, and they're coming up as broken as hurt as we are. And so it's like things like this are so important to like learn how to love each other, learn how to be grown and get past it, and you know, deal with your ego and things like that. So I just appreciate you guys.
I'm in the outlining stage of 2 different books, one about co-parenting and another one about being a father outside of the co-parenting dynamic. And I have not finished or completed them, but they're there. I think for me, as a visual creative, I want to find some other way to do so. I love sharing things on social media because it's a no-brainer for me. I don't sit and think about captions. I just write them. Sometimes they end up long, you know, that people joke about. But,
I love it.
Yeah. But it's really important. And I think that a lot of times men, especially black men, we have the stigma that we are not emotionally affected by the same things that you are as women, and that's totally untrue. Unfortunately, our society has caused us to be silent about expressing emotion, as you know, as a therapist. And so social media allows me to share certain things that I probably would tell such therapists, but I'm able to, as a writer, know how to formulate my own feelings in a way that's relatable for other people. And I think, you know, privately, I have more men reach out to me in DM saying, yo, I'm going through this. I just came from picking up my son and we argued and it's crazy. Say something to me that's gonna, you know, help me out. And it's such a raw thing that this person, if you look at this person and they're 6'4", 200 pounds, you know, 300 pounds, and they asking me for advice about what they need to do in their situation, we have to make this conversation normal.
Yes.
We have to be able to talk about how we get through and it be accepted. We know every single sports stat. We know who had a triple-double last night, who, you know, is great in our fantasy league, and we know all of these stats, but a lot of us don't take the time to learn about like real mental health and how things affect us. It's just not cool to talk about it, unfortunately. So I'm just looking for a way to make it cool to talk about publicly, so that because people do want to join the conversation.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's almost like showing up to something is like the admission of guilt that that you need help, and no one likes to feel like they need help. So it just has to be very specific to make it a conversation and not judgmental advice. And you know, like, I'm not a professional. I'm just someone who has co-parented for 14 years, and
They have life coach certificates now. You can.
right, no, I get it. I definitely get it. I just like sharing from the authentic space, and from what I know works for me, and share it in a way that someone else is able to say, oh, okay, I can't do that exact thing, but I can do this. Let me rock with this. So yeah, we just need to continue to share.
I love that. And with my book, Keep It Classy, Co-Parenting Strategies for Unstoppable Moms and Devoted Dads. I want to, with the tour, the book tour, I don't want to do just a regular book tour. So we are going to do like an experience and have these open conversations. And hopefully these beautiful people will be a part of it. I actually heard that Mashonda was coming out with her book, Blend. I actually reached out to her on social media, and I'm like, great minds think alike. Like, we need to have these conversations, especially in our culture. We don't. And why is it, like, why are people talking about this? Like, we have to. And it's my duty. I'm gonna scream it from the mountaintop, and just, it starts with us. It does. And we're doing it. You guys are walking the walk, and I love it. So,
Mashonda, I'm going to take it way back. There was like a topic, like way back, I think turning around. It was like in the old school magazines, and I remember you had a situation when you was first speaking out about, you know, your breakup, and Alicia wanted your son to call her Ummi, and it meant like mommy. Yes, and then you had a big issue with that. How'd you deal with that and get past that? Like, my son's not calling you mommy. Like, you just came around. Like, what's going on? Like, you know, and I remember that. That was a big thing for you. Like, you know, so.
Yes, Umi.
That's what it was.
So Alicia didn't like the sound of stepmommy. And because I was a stepmommy before and I didn't like the sound of stepmommy, I was empathetic towards her. And I write so much about empathy because if we can't find that part of us, things will just stay dark. So, you know, he told me about the booming thing, and I didn't like it at first because I'm your mom, and I'm, and me.
Yes.
And there goes the ego, right there, forefront. And I'm like, hold up, you know, it's not about me right now. It's about my son, and it is about this woman that's taking care of him when he's over there. And she's feeding him, and she's bathing him, and she's driving him to school. And if she wants him to call her Umi, fine. And I had the conversation with my son. He said, I know you're my mommy. You know, and kids know. And I just got through it. It was just one of those little humps.
All right, guys, so listen. Sorry. We ran way over time. We're going to close out, okay? Follow me on Instagram, slide it in, do a live video. That's what's popping right now.
So, guys, like seriously, this is so, I'm actually in the process of finishing Mashonda's book, and what I'm going through is the privacy part. I don't want nobody to know. Because I feel like, dang, you know, my son is so young. I feel like child number 2, like, girl, is it you? Are you the issue? So for me, I'm reading this, and I'm like, now I'm texting her differently. I'm like, girl, and she's probably like, what's she talking to? Because I feel like that's my hunger. Because it's so raw, and it's so real, and it's just like, here y'all go. This what y'all want, and you respect it so much more because it's like, girl, you know? And for me, I'm just like, and I'm not even, we're gonna end it, and she could tell me later, but I just want to know, how did you get past the keeping everything private to, hey, everybody here, and then turn it into something where you're healing, not just yourself, you're healing a whole bunch of people. So I just want everybody to stand up and get everybody up here. It's so hard to do. It's hard to do. You know what I mean? Oh, you guys are amazing. amazing. And we're gonna close out, guys, a flower wall.